We are just a few weeks away from Summer Game Fest 2026, and with it, we're also in the realm for a potential reveal for the third and final chapter in the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. Final Fantasy VII Re. Of course, we don't exactly know the name for the final entry yet, but there's been a ton of speculation since Rebirth released. Some names that are interesting, and some that are that. For today, I thought of a video topic would be to speculate and discuss just some of the names for what the third part might be. The ones in this video being just some of the ones I've seen around over the years, whether on various subreddits or on Twitter, in between discourse. These aren't in any particular order, but before we get started, there are a couple of ground rules I want to make first. For starters, the name itself is more than likely going to start with Re, like both Remake and Rebirth did. I don't see them going in any other direction given the similarities between the two. Secondly is the amount of syllables. The most common consensus is that the title would only have 2 syllables. However, I think this might be a bit incorrect. If you're unaware, in the FF7 Rebirth Ultimania, Tetsuya Nomura said that at one point, the title for the second game, which of course would end up being Rebirth, was originally considered to be Reunion, which of course is 3. They however had to change it because that name was reserved for the Crisis Core remaster, Crisis Core Reunion. So I have a tendency to think that rule might not apply, but who knows for sure. Which, speaking of the Reunion title, let's get this one out of the way now. The name for the third part will more than likely not be Final Fantasy VII Reunion, for the reason I already mentioned above. So while yes, I think many people, including myself, think that Reunion is an absolute perfect title to end the trilogy on, it won't be the one that's chosen. It's kind of a shame, I really love that name. But of course, there's plenty of other names that we can talk about. In no particular order from likely to least likely, we have the next one I'd like to talk about being one that I hear thrown around every now and then is Final Fantasy VII Reborn, and from what I've been able to gather, there's a couple of reasons why some feel this one is likely. For one of the reasons, however, we have to go back to Final Fantasy VII Remake and its soundtrack. In that game, of course, the final boss is Sephiroth with a just absolutely incredible version of One Winged Angel. The title for this version? One Winged Angel Rebirth, and of course that would end up being the title for the second entry. And once again in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Cloud and Aerith fight Sephiroth, yet with another version of One Winged Angel made for the game. The title for this one? One Winged Angel Reborn. And even the version of Sephiroth you fight in Rebirth is tentatively titled Sephiroth Reborn. By and large, I see this one thrown around a lot by fans, and for a pretty obvious reason. The only real issue I see with this being the potential title is just the similarity of it to Rebirth. It would almost be like calling the second title Remade after Remake. It's just too similar, even if it technically does have a different meaning. Do I see the logic? Absolutely, but I lean towards this one not being likely in the end. And besides, there's plenty of other names that I feel fit thematically and have even more reason to buy into them. For this next one we have Final Fantasy VII Reclaim. We have a few different reasons as to why this one has been thrown around, albeit not as much by fans as some of the other ones we're going to go over. For starters, let's talk about Sephiroth in the last 6 years or so. Sephiroth, for all intents and purposes, has been hugely expanded on both in the remake games and in other material. He shows up infinitely more in Midgar than he ever does in the original, has a bigger role throughout Rebirth, and we even have the young Sephiroth story content included in Ever Crisis, the mobile game that someone ties into the remake games. In general, a constant thing in these games thus far has been expanding Sephiroth. You can even argue that Sephiroth is one of the biggest characters of these games so far with how much focus he's been given. And the title of Rebirth, while it relates to a lot of aspects of the characters of the game, I think it also could be related to Sephiroth. Like I said earlier, one of the final fights in Rebirth is titled Sephiroth Reborn. If we're going for the theory that the titles of Rebirth and potentially of the third title are meant to be related to Sephiroth, Reclaim fits that bill incredibly well. Cloud even says so in the beginning of Rebirth, that Sephiroth wants to reclaim his birthright.
He wants to reclaim his birthright and rule over the planet with Genova at his side.
But even still, Rebirth could also tie back into the cast in Rebirth, like Zack for example. And Reclaim could also relate to someone like Cloud, for example, who needs to reclaim his true identity after the, let's just say, complete and utter mindfuck he goes there by the end of Rebirth. It also fits the Re in 2 syllables, both. The latter is a rule that's actually accurate, and I got that one wrong. Overall, I like this theory quite a lot. I'm somewhat surprised it isn't thrown around nearly as much as some of the others, but I do dig it. In regards to the next one, Final Fantasy VII Reunite. This is one that I almost see nobody throwing around, and while I can sort of see why, I do think there's a bit that could specifically hint towards this. More so, the end of Rebirth. Part of the ending fights of Rebirth have Cloud and Zack teaming up briefly to fight Sephiroth, but it ends fairly shortly with Sephiroth splitting the two up with this line.
Just as worlds unite, so too do they part.
Zack, once he's back in the church at the end of the game, repeats this line but follows it up with,
But who's to say they can't unite again?
Admittedly, I think this is the only real bit of information we have that could point to this being the title, but it all comes down to what exactly Zack's role in Part 3 is going to be. Although if the syllable theory is accurate, then this title is just thrown out as it has more than 2. But like I said earlier, I have my skepticism. Overall, I do like this one, but I can see why it's not thrown around as much as the others. Such as... This one is going to be a bit short. Final Fantasy VII Requiem, a name that rolls off the tongue, feels punchy, and I feel would make a lot of sense given the events of Rebirth and Aerith's death, and the story Part 3 will likely be telling. The definition of Requiem is an act of token of remembrance. Essentially, it's an homage to the dead. That fits perfectly with the core themes of FF7, the cycle of life and death. The only main reason I'm feeling this might not be the case is the actual way to pronounce the name. Requiem doesn't have the same sounds as Remake or Rebirth, or any of the other various names that have theorized by many others, and the ones we said in this video. I wanted to throw this one in because of its core theming and very familiar feeling to the themes of 7 and its story, but I do sort of lean away from this one because of the rules we just established. But for the final title today that I'd like to go over, this one is the one that I and many others lean towards the most by far. By and large, if you ask most people what they feel is the most likely name for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3, the one you're probably going to hear the most is Return. Of course, it fits with the established rules, the 2 syllables, the re, they both work here. On top of that, the word return is closely related to FF7 and the remake games plenty of times over the years. Return to the planet, return to the live stream, and in core story moments, you can even relate this to Cloud returning to his true self. Hell, even back when FF7 Remake got re-revealed all the way back in 2020, the teaser just straight up opens with "The return draws closer." Even the original reveal all the way back in 2015 seems to hint towards the concept of returning.
The reunion at hand may bring joy. It may bring fear. But let us embrace whatever it brings. For they are coming back.
Barrett even says scripture from the sector on Rebirth that uses the term once again.
We who are born of the planet, with her we speak, her flesh we shape. Unto her promised land shall we one day return.
And probably the most notable example so far involves Aerith. I mentioned earlier that the potential name for Rebirth stems from the title of the new 1 Winged Angel track in Rebirth. However, Aerith's theme that plays near the end of Rebirth might change that a little bit. Aerith is more than likely going to play a huge role in FF7 Remake Part 3's narrative, both her death and the result of that, and whatever she's doing from within the livestream itself to stop Sephiroth. She's one of the main players in the story, and her role is far from over in my opinion. The title for her theme at the end of Rebirth? Aerith's theme, Return to the Planet. By and large, Return definitely fits the most, and if you were to ask me, seems like the most likely candidate for a name for Part 3. Unless it's absolute sheer coincidence, I'm landing on Return for the name of Part 3 at this time. But hey, that's the fun of this type of discussion. I could be dead wrong. We could all be dead wrong. There could be a suggestion that barely anybody has said that's actually right. Hell, I wouldn't put it past Square to pick a name that nobody expects. I didn't even get to go over all the potential names today, and that's because I didn't want this video to be like 4 hours. Hell, we might not even get Part 3 revealed at SGF. Maybe we'll finally get another look in Kingdom Hearts 4. I know, good joke. If you have any theories yourself or have any other popular ones that I might have missed, please feel free to leave them down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As for me, I'm actually replaying through the OG right now, and I don't think there's been a single line that actually could fit the bill for a title. Hey.